nel mondo radiofonico, dato che proprio il 13 febbraio, in occasione del World Radio Day, c'è stata una notizia, il World Radio Alliance, questa nuova iniziativa. Allora noi ne vogliamo parlare insieme a James Cridland, who is a very well-known radio futurologist. Welcome back, James.
Buongiorno, it's great to be here.
Buongiorno. So we were thinking about it. Why not? Why not host back James Cridland even on the occasion of the World Radio Day that we celebrated on the 13th of February? And at the same time, we've heard this beautiful initiative, World Radio Alliance. What is it and why is so beneficial for radio companies, James?
It's going to be very helpful to radio companies. Obviously, what we've seen over the last many years, 5-10 years, is we've seen companies like Spotify and YouTube and all of those types of different companies appear and start talking about that they produce radio of some sort. And of course, radio themselves, radio companies, are based in each individual country in the world. So radio out of Italy is different and differently run to radio out of the UK, out of Australia, and so on and so forth. So what the World Radio Alliance is there to do is to bring together all of the trade bodies and actually help them all act as one, so that radio can actually talk with a common voice and talk to governments across the world about how important radio still is.
But why do you think radio is still one of the most important and powerful tools for advertisers right now?
Oh, it's incredibly important. I mean, it's important for advertisers, of course. It's also important just for humans, just for us. If you look at the radio listening figures, then radio is, 9 out of 10 people listen to the radio every single week, whether that's here in Brisbane, in Australia, or whether that's in other parts of the world, in the UK, in Finland, or the US, or all of those other places. But also what we've seen is that radio has been tremendously important through the pandemic over the last 2 years. It's been helping people with reliable information and also just keeping people in touch with other human beings. So it's been a really important thing.
That's true. Well, when you just mentioned the numbers, can we trust those data?
Yes, I think we can. All of the data is worked out in very different ways for different countries. It all seems to work out that somewhere between 85 and 95% of us are listening to radio. So I think either it's a tremendous coincidence and a clever piece of conspiracy theory, or probably more likely that actually that's how it works. You know, there are people who are listening to the radio every single week, and lots of us. So I think that certainly, radio is and has always been a tremendously important part of our lives. And I think radio will continue to be in its 100th year.
We really hope so. But so since the pandemic, you believe, obviously, by looking at the data, that the listenership has grown and is still rising, or there is a certain level of drops?
No, it's been growing quite nicely. It's been changing, of course, because we have had less commuting in the morning, so less driving in the morning. So actually the peak time has moved a little bit later in the day, but it's still very, very popular. I think one of the interesting things has been, certainly what we've seen here in Australia, has been that speech radio has been listened to much, much more over the last year. The amount of music radio listened to has gone down slightly. The amount of speech radio, radio like this, has actually increased a lot. And I think that probably goes back to what radio is really good at. It's good at the shared experience. It's good at that human connection. That's what radio is very good at. And I think, from that point of view, radio has had a really good couple of years, and very important as well, I think, for our mental health as well, to be able to hear a range of different voices from all sorts of people across the world.
the sense of community that radio is able to establish every time. And that's very interesting, because you told me that basically the peak time right now is much later, is not in the morning. So the breakfast shows, I think even here in the UK, is basically not very well like before. So it really depends on listeners' habits and not on the radio contents in this case.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, so if you have a look at Radio 1 in the UK, for example, their breakfast show has gone a little bit later. So now their breakfast show finishes at 10:30 rather than at 9 or 8:30. And I think that that's part of it. But what we're seeing is a slight shift, but it's a shift of, half an hour or so in terms of the most popular time for radio. But radio is still by far the most important commercial medium to listen to in the morning. So if you're going out and buying a new car, if you're going out to the supermarket, if you're going out to work and you're going to go out and buy something at lunchtime, then radio is the last commercial medium that you actually have a listen to. And that's important because it means that it's a great place to advertise things. So that's not gone away anytime soon.
What do you think is maybe what does it make a radio station a successful one after what we basically been experienced throughout all these years with the pandemic? Right now, what radio should do to be listened more carefully, even from the listeners?
Well, earlier on, I was talking to the EBU, which is a big group of broadcasters in Geneva, and I was talking to them about the real opportunity that we have of using what radio is good at, using that human connection, using that shared experience. It's something that things like Spotify can't do. It's something if you're a jukebox radio station and all you do is you play 10 great songs in a row, that's fine for some people, but actually there's a lot of technology that will do a better job. So I think for radio to continue to be as popular and as successful as it's been in the past, I think just making sure that we are using the very best of the human connection and the shared experience and talking about, relevant things that people want to have a listen to. So, so I think as long as we do that, I think radio's future is certainly a really strong one.
Since the last time that we talked together about the future of radio station, I think that since then, and we look at now the data, one of the most evident trend is that the rise of radio station in streaming, the famous internet radio station. And we can see that anyway, most of them, a lot of them are very high professional, but we don't understand why they are not still recognized legally. I mean, with a license, for example, we have here in the UK Offcom that license DAB and FM. Why not the internet radio station, James?
Well, if you want Ofcom to be fiddling around with your radio broadcasting and tell you what you can and can't say and all of that, then fine, go for that if you really want to. But I think actually one of the benefits of internet broadcasting is you're still obviously governed by the law of the land, but it isn't a finite resource as broadcast radio spectrum is. So therefore, there's no real requirement for you to be licensed in that same way. What's important, I think, is that people know where to find you. They know how easy it is to ask a smart speaker to have a listen to your radio station, and I think that's the important part. There's a real debate, I think, about how much regulation we actually want in terms of organisations like Ofcom in the UK or ACMA here in Australia, telling you what you can and can't do. If you were in Canada, for example, they would tell you what songs you could play and even what versions of songs you could play. You can't play the album version, you have to play the single version and all of that kind of stuff. And that's fine, but that's probably the right thing for radio in the 1970s and probably not so much the right thing for radio right now.
Well, that's true, but at the same time, we know some stories that even if you want to be part of some organization or projects, they also require, you have the Ofcom license, or you don't have the Ofcom license, you are not part of us. So it's like a little bit discriminatory.
It is to an extent, and I would certainly agree with that. I think there are certain organisations and certain companies like Radio Player, as one example, which is a very popular app within Europe and including the UK for radio listening, and they will only allow you on if you're an Offcom licensee. I think one of the reasons for that is that is a guarantee, if you like, of your quality. In terms of the type of thing that you end up broadcasting. I mean, you could probably get an Ofcom license without actually broadcasting on DAB anyway. So you could probably get an Ofcom license. It's only 200 quid or something. And maybe that's a way of getting around that. I don't know. But I think, certainly in terms of that, at the end of the day, of course, it is a regulation, and it does mean that there are certain things that you have to do in order to get that particular license. But that's a UK thing. There are other ways of getting licenses in other countries as well, and I think it's very different in very different countries.
Yeah,
indeed.
Course, yeah.
I mean, my understanding in Italy is that you can run a radio station just by turning on a transmitter, broadcasting on it, and if nobody complains, then you're good and you can carry on going, which is a little bit different in the UK, I know.
That's true. Thank you very much, James, for talking to us about the future of radio station and, of course, this important initiative, which is the World Radio Alliance. And we hope, literally, that this initiative can help more radio companies as well as sales companies come together, collaborate together, and establish a new partnership together and see the future growing, of course, even in radio station. Thank you, James Cridland.
Well, grazie mille. Thank you very much.
Thank you. E invece noi continuiamo con la musica di London One Radio e altri appuntamenti, perché questa sera poi avremo in diretta la nostra intervista esclusiva a Filippo Scotti, ovvero il protagonista del film È stata la mano di Dio, The Hand of God, il film di Paolo Sorrentino nominato anche agli Oscar. E quindi ascolterete in diretta su London One alle ore 18-19 italiane la nostra intervista esclusiva. Quindi vi aspettiamo numerosi. Scaricate la nostra app oppure in macchina con CarPlay o Amazon Eco Auto, e se preferite anche sul nostro sito londononeраdio.com. A presto.